here this evening, so we do have to start at this as an official meeting. So, Marcia.
Okay, so we're starting as an official meeting, but because it's a work session, we will not be taking minutes per se as we would in a regular meeting, but we're recording it all. And so we will have summary of the meeting or the work session, and it also will be recorded. So I don't know how well the sound's going to pick up for everybody, but we'll figure that part out. And so other than that, I'm a participant only. We do have a quorum. That's why we're making sure we comply with the rules for Open Meetings Act. But other than that, Deborah's going to run the meeting with Rob's help and some participants. So thank you all for being here. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, and Marcia is our board chair. I forgot to mention that. And we have several other board members here as well. We'll have a chance to introduce ourselves in just a second. But again, really appreciate you being here. This is a really important process for myself and for our board. It's something that the board was really passionate about in terms of getting this done, getting this started in my first year here in the district. So I really appreciate the board's leadership in this. One of the things that we knew right away is that we wanted to be able to have a facilitator that's done this sort of work before. Deborah Silk is here, and Deb is a member of the Montana School Boards Association, and she can tell you more about her job and herself, but really appreciate Deb being here to help facilitate this process. Deb has done this work in a lot of districts around the state and is familiar with working with community groups, so I'm really excited to have her here to help us. And then in addition, we'll talk more about this later, but one of the things we did is we asked community to fill out a survey. So hopefully you did that yourself as well. We had about 2,500 responses to that survey. We don't have that tabulated right tonight, but we will have that tabulated for future meetings, and that'll help guide our discussion as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Deb, if that's okay.
Yeah, thank you, Rob, for allowing me to be here and facilitate this session. As Rob said, I'm with the Montana School Boards Association, and I'm an attorney by trade. I don't typically disclose that, but I will to this group. But one of the things that I love about my position at MTSBA, and understand I've been representing the interests of public schools my entire career, and one of the things that I like most about working at MTSBA is facilitating these types of sessions where we get stakeholders in a room and you talk about mission and vision and direction of any public school. I probably work with anywhere between 50 and 75 of our public schools throughout the state. And I know from experience that districts that pay attention and think about planning differently. You know, a lot of people come to these meetings and they think that you're going to sit in and dedicate yourselves to 3 meetings and then there's no other work to be done. You have to change your mindset and really think about this as planning strategically and not strategic planning, because strategic planning really means you're going to a meeting, right? We're going to develop and look at mission and vision and goals and strategies, and then we're done. And you can't think about it that way. One of the things that I love about tonight is when I facilitate these sessions with public schools, I don't think I've seen this many people in one room in a long time, if ever. So I think it's phenomenal that we have as many people as we do here. We're going to go around the room so that everyone can introduce yourself and your affiliation. And no, I promise I'm not going to talk the whole time. You guys are here to work, right? I'm just facilitating. But I also, because I know that there's a committee of core people sitting at the tables, but we also have quite a few people in the audience. And so we'll start with you, and I want everybody to introduce themselves, but I would also invite any of you sitting in the back around the room, if you want to participate, feel free to come up to one of the tables and do so. I think we have plenty of room for you to participate in the process as opposed to being an observer, okay? So with that, let's start with you. And again, your name and your affiliation, whether you're an administrator or employee or community member in Missoula, and just so everybody knows who's in the room.
So I'm Melina Oldperson, and I am a school board trustee, and I'm also a parent. I have 4 children who are MCPS students, 1 at Sentinel and 3 at Russell.
Hello, I'm Julie Robitaille, and I'm one of the executive regional directors who work with half of the schools. I also grew up in Missoula, attended Missoula County Public Schools, as did my kids, and I've been in the district for nearly 30 years.
I'm Sharon Strobus. I'm a high school trustee. I represent Bonner and Charter Range. I have 3 kids. 2 have graduated already, long gone, and I have a sophomore at Big Sky.
Hi, I'm Gabe Rudd. I'm the HR director for the district, and we actually had 4 kids go through MCPS, so been in the district for 21 years.
I'm Gabrielle Safer-Olson, and with your president, Julie, I'll say that I am a graduate of Whittier, Lowell, Rattlesnake Middle School, and Hellgate High School. And now I'm currently a parent of a 4th grader at Lowell and a 7th grader at CS Porter.
My name is Meg Witcher. I'm the program supervisor for Missoula Parks and Recreation, so I've got Missoula's youth after school and in the summertime.
So I'm Karen Allen. I'm the other executive regional director that works with the other half. I did not grow up in Missoula, so I'm going to start the other side of the room, but I have been here somewhere over 25 years.
Hi, I'm Casey Ballou. I'm a middle school teacher and the president of the Missoula Education Association.
Dale Oliger. I am the superintendent at Lowell Public Schools, a K that feeds MCPS, also a product K-12 of Missoula County Public Schools.
My name is Scott Shook. I'm a teacher at CS Porter, and my son graduated from Hellgate High School and went through MCPS his entire school year, school career.
My name is Trisha Owens. I am a 2nd grade teacher at Lowell. I am a graduate of Big Sky High School, and I have a senior at Hellgate and a freshman at Big Sky.
I somewhat introduced myself, but my name is Marsha Holland. I'm the chair of the MCPS board. I actually represent Hellgate Elementary as a high school trustee, and it's the largest feeder into our high schools, and it's the largest independent K-8 district in all of Montana. And with that, my son went to Hellgate Elementary and then Hellgate High School, so he had consistency in his name. And he just graduated from college this year.
I'm Russ Hendrickson. I'm from the Washington Middle School, and I'm a Bitter transplant. So I was in Bitter for 20 years, and I've been up here 6 years. But I'm a UM grad, and I got 2 daughters at UM.
I'm Nicole Mitchell. I'm with the flagship program. It's a program of Western Montana Mental Health Center, and we provide out-of-school time opportunities for kids K through 12. I'm also a parent. I have 2 kids. One's a senior and one's in college, and they've gone through the MCPS school district.
Susie Badgett. I'm the assistant principal at Hellgate High School. Heard a lot of that name.
Hi, I'm Pat McHugh. I'm the director of business operations for the school district.
I'm Diane Lorenzen. I'm a trustee. I graduated Hellgate High School, as was my father and my daughter.
Good evening. I'm Elise Guest. I'm the executive director for teaching and learning. And I am also a Hellgate grad as well as my mother was, so multiple generations and commitment to the school district.
My name is Burley Nichols. I'm the director of facilities. I have a 6th grade daughter and an 8th grade boy at Meadow Hill, and then a junior at Big Sky High School. I've been in the district about almost 12 years.
My name is Mike Smith. I am a K through 12 trustee. I have a son that graduated from Hellgate and a senior at Hellgate. I am a transplant to Missoula, but I did marry a native.
I'm Becky Sorensen. I am the principal at Hawthorne Elementary, and I've held a lot of positions in MCPS. This is my 30th year. I know. First page of the seniority list.
My name is Amy Shattuck. I'm the principal at Lewis and Clark Elementary. I am a product of MCPS. I graduated from Sentinel, and I have 2 boys that one has graduated and one is in 7th grade at Washington.
My name is Susan Tower. I'm the executive director of the Missoula Education Foundation. I am not a Missoula native, but I did marry a mostly native Missoulian. But I am a graduate of public schools in Oregon.
Ken Ritchell, the principal of Lowell Alternative High School. I have a son who's a sophomore at Hellgate High School.
I'm Terry Shaw. I'm a secretary at Washington Middle School. I too graduated from Hellgate High School. My son, however, decided to graduate from Sentinel.
Hi, I'm Ray Cooper. I'm the Director of Technology, and I will have a Paxton Panther in just 2 short years.
I'm Casey Dernberger. I'm the CT coordinator for the district. I graduated from Hellgate, married a graduate from Sentinel, and lost the battle, and my son goes to Sentinel. And I have a middle school kid at Washington and a elementary daughter at Lewis and Clark.
I'm Sherry Postma, and I'm the president of MCPS, which is the support staff union. I am also a catalog technician in the district library. And I have 2 daughters that graduated from Hellgate, and I have a granddaughter who will attend Hellgate.
My name is Glenda Weasel. I work for the Indian Education Department here for Missoula County Public Schools, and all my 5 children graduated from the Missoula County Public School District.
Hi, I'm Tom Gallagher. I'm the dean at Missoula College, and I have a daughter who's a senior at Sentinel High School.
I'm Scott Lemon. I'm brand new to Missoula. I came from Indiana. I've got 2 daughters that will be moving and populating the schools here in Missoula. I work in enrollment management for the University of Montana.
I'm Jennifer Newbold. I'm a K-12 trustee on our MCPS school board and a parent to 3 MCPS kiddos.
I'm Michelle Morey. I'm a paraeducator at Paxton Elementary. I grew up in Missoula, graduated from Big Sky, moved to Japan for 21 years, and I'm back in the district, and both my kids, one in U of M College and one at Washington.
I'm Tom Benson. I'm with Arts Missoula, and Arts Missoula is the home of Spark Arts as well as Global and Cultural Affairs. And I have a son who graduated from Hellgate about 4 to 5 years ago.
I'm Mark Monaco. I represent the Missoula Police Department. Been an officer for 27 years, and my wife thought it'd be a good idea. I put in for school resource officer. I didn't want anything to do with being a school resource officer, as I was telling Heidi. I lost that battle, and it turned out to be the best thing that I've ever done in my career, and I've done a lot of stuff. So I'm really happy and honored to be invited to be part of this. Thank you.
I'm Heidi Kendall. I'm a trustee on the school board. I went to Hellgate many years ago, and my 2 sons graduated from Hellgate in recent years.
I'm Christy Walgamot. I'm a library media assistant at Sentinel High School. Both of my kids just graduated from Sentinel, and I've been with the district. This will be year 14 for me.
I'm Andrea Schluter, and I'm a secretary at Sentinel High School. I too graduated from Hellgate, married a Sentinel graduate, had 2 kids, one graduated from Sentinel and one graduated from Hellgate.
So let's do the last table in the back, and then we'll go around and introduce those in the gallery.
I'm Lisa Mecklenburg-Jackson. I have 2 daughters that are juniors at Sentinel, and I'm the president of the Sentinel High School Booster Club, also president of the Sentinel High School Band Booster Club, and I've been president of the Mental Health PTO and also president of the Chief Charlotte PTO.
I'm Mike Halligan, and I am the Director of Corporate and Government Relations for the Washington Companies, and I have 3 sons who, by the grace of God, made it through Sentinel.
I'm Heather Foster, CEO of the YMCA, and a parent to 2 MCPS kids. I have one sophomore at Sentinel and one 7th grader at Meadow Hill.
Oh, can we go this way? Yeah. Okay, my name is Robin Eddingen Ayers, and I'm a grandparent. I have twins that are 3rd graders at Paxton. I had a daughter that graduated from Sentinel. I spent most of my life here in Missoula, but I wasn't born here.
I'm Lisa Viscavage. I am with the Missoula City County Health Department. I run the Health Promotion Prevention Division, and I oversee our health equity programs. And then I'm also a parent of a middle school and a high school student.
Dave Bell. I'm a parent of a beautiful daughter at Russell and a parent liaison for Spark there, and I'm a new substitute teacher. So.
I'm Vicki McDonald. I'm a K-12 trustee. I'm the oldest of 10 children, and all of us went to Hellgate Elementary and graduated from Hellgate. My husband graduated from Hellgate and went through all of the school system here. I have 2 children that graduated from Sentinel. 4 grandchildren, 2 from Big Sky, 2 from Hellgate, and tons of nieces and nephews that are filthy beyond.
You want to go, Nick?
I'm Nick Salmon. I'm an educational facility planner that lives here in Missoula, works all around the world as a planner and professional development coach. And I have 3 sons, all of whom have attended or completed their schooling at Hellgate.
Sounding pretty Hellgate heavy, so I'll just keep that going. I'm Rob Jensen. I've taught at Hellgate for just shy of 20 years, been in and out of Missoula about double that, including a stint in Peace Corps, and then Teach for America, teaching inner city kids. That's how I got started in teaching.
My name is Jonathan Neff. I'm a parent over at Lowell Elementary. I have 3 girls there, twins in 1st grade and a 5th grader, and I work over at the university.
My name is Tess. I'm here on behalf of the GUTS program through the YWCA. We offer after-school and lunch programs for all the elementary and middle schools in the county.
Hi, I'm Sienna Solberg. I'm the Spark Arts Ignite Learning Director.
My name is Rebecca Naskovitz. I'm a parent of 2 students at Missoula County Public Schools. One's in middle school and one's in elementary school, and I serve on the board of Spark Arts.
I'm Neil Massey. I actually work down in Bitterroot as a teacher, but we just moved to Missoula. I have a daughter in Hellgate, so I'm glad I'm among friends there. She just is finishing final week. My son goes to Lowell, and my wife works at Big Sky.
Hi, I'm Tiffany Hobbs. I teach 5th grade at Chief Charlo, and I have 2 kids also at Chief Charlo with me, soon to be 3 next year.
I'm Ariel Cornelius. I'm a Big Sky High School math teacher, and then I have 3 littles within our Missoula County Public Schools district.
Hi, I'm Steve Strothman. I have 2 little boys at Chief Charlo, and I have one that will be there in a few years as well. I also happen to be a teacher at C.S. Porter, and I am a child of the Valley. I went to school at Lowell until 4th grade, Missoula until high school, and graduated from Frenchtown, so I'm all around here.
Hi, I'm Erica Ritzema. I work for Missoula County Relationship Violence Services. I do teen dating violence prevention through healthy relationship and consent education.
I'm Jen Malloy. I have a kiddo at C.S. Porter and one at Lowell, and I am a faculty member at the UM School of Social Work.
I'm Jeff Lamson. I have 2 young ladies at Lewis and Clark. I married my wife who went through Lewis and Clark. I'm a product of Helena Public Schools. I am co-vice president on the PTA, kind of thrown into that this year. I got involved with the boundary study last year. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Katie Moore. I'm the CEO of the Boys and Girls Clubs in Missoula County. I'm sort of still new to Missoula. I was in education for about 6 years in New Orleans, so excited to learn more about what you all are doing tonight.
Hi, I'm Heather Hunt. I went to Hellgate. I have a 1st grader at Lowell, and I work at Partnership for Children's Mental Health.
I'm Katie Coster. I'm a 5th grade teacher at Rattlesnake Elementary.
Hi everyone, my name is Hatton Littman. Thanks for listening to all of our communications and showing up. It's amazing. I serve as a communications director. I have a graduate from Hellgate High School, and I have a 16-year-old who's finishing his high school degree in Denver at North High School. My husband is the assistant principal at Big Sky High School, so we have to work really hard not to talk about work when we get home. And I am a Montana transplant. I grew up in Richmond, Virginia, but I'm really happy this is my adopted home.
Great. I will just tell you, after listening to your affiliations in this room, I am blown away of the breadth of the people that we have here. And hopefully all of you will commit to not only tonight, but the next 3 sessions. I think it would be phenomenal if we could have all of you back to at least finish this initial process. I would invite you, before we get started, and I'm just going to do a quick overview, and then I promise you're going to get to work, Marcia?
I just wanted to make one announcement that I meant to make earlier. Because we have a quorum, we usually have public comment at the beginning of every work session, but we thought it'd be a lot more productive to have it at the end, so there will be an opportunity for public comment as well as the discussion we'll have within the group. So that's why it's last on your agenda.
Good. So any of you sitting in the back, if you want to join the tables, it looks like there's about 18 of you if I counted right. I think if 2 people go to each of the 9 tables, I think we could spread out pretty evenly. Perfect. Going through this process, it tends to change the way that people think organizationally. A lot of the work that we do, and I have to back up a minute because a lot of the work that you're going to be doing over the next 3 sessions are really centered around the work of Jim Collins. I don't know how many of you have heard of Jim Collins. He's a renowned strategic planner, author of Good to Great and Built to Last. A lot of the work that we do, and I've actually trained underneath an individual by the name of Glenn Tecker. If you Google Tecker International, Glenn is also known as a renowned strategic planner facilitator all over the world. Lance Melton and I had the pleasure a few years ago of training underneath Glenn. And what this process really is about is, number one, I know that from visiting with Hatton and Rob, that it's been a while since Missoula has engaged in long-term strategic planning. And I think it's important whenever you're looking at any organization, this process is not intended to change everything that MCPS is doing. There are some phenomenal things that this district has done over the course of a number of years. I just read the report before I left Helena earlier today about the things that this district has accomplished over the past 5 years, and it's pretty phenomenal. That doesn't just happen by happenstance. Anybody can make progress if you just go through the motions. One of the things that I think all of us know in public education, and one of the criticisms, quite frankly, of public education is we're cookie cutter, one size fits all. And those of us that have worked in public education for as long as we have, we know that's not true. But you also have to remember that perception is reality. And we talk a lot at the state level, and I've been in this room many times for trainings. We talk an awful lot about this change in the dynamic from educating students to personalizing education. Anybody in the room think that that's a total game changer and shift in our dynamics and the paradigm? Yes, some of you superintendents do. If you look at, and most of you know that, and I'm sort of getting off task here, which isn't unusual, that we just had a Montana Supreme Court decision go to the U.S. Supreme Court, the Espinoza case that was heard yesterday. But when you're looking at personalizing education, that's not a new phenomenon in this state. In fact, if you look at our Montana Constitution in 1972, the Article 10, Section 1, and think about how long ago that was, the goal of the people of this state, put together by our constitutional framers, said that it's really to maximize the potential, educational potential of each citizen. And when you're talking about K through 12 public education, you're talking about kids, okay? So it's not everybody, it's each. And that's when we start talking about this personalized, customized approach to education. I want you to be thinking about that as we go through these 3 sessions. But this isn't a process, and I'm not here to change anything. This is where collaboration between the school district and community is really important. You guys are going to set the future direction of this district. And this is important work when you look at what's at stake in terms of the lives of our youth. Let's face it, I went through public education, and again, I don't typically tell people this, but I grew up in Butte, right? Much different than Missoula. Oh yeah, so did Pat. I'm going to start picking you guys out from the crowd that I know. At any rate, we all know that when you're talking about a K through 12 and even pre-K through 12 public education system, we only get one shot with these kids in terms of changing the course of their life. And so the work that all of you do, I was listening to the policeman in the back, and I was hoping you weren't coming for me, because that would be not unusual, just kidding. But at any rate, when you're talking about the impact that all of you have on kids, you know that every time you touch a youth's life, that it changes and has the potential to change the direction of their life. So I want you to be thinking about that as we go through. So again, we're not here to change everything that MCPS is doing. In fact, what we're going to be discussing tonight, we're not even going to get into vision-based work. That's going to be in sessions 2 and 3. What we're really going to be talking about tonight is your core ideology, the mission of this district. And one of the reasons that we take this in 3 sessions is because there's 3 natural stopping points when we go through this process. Tonight we're going to be talking about core ideology, what MCPS stands for, and what you value. At your tables, you have a document that describes both the mission and the vision and the core beliefs. And you can look at those. But based upon my conversations with Rob and Patton, those were designed and developed sometime between 2010 and 2013. And I think it's time to revisit those and either affirm that those are still the mission and core beliefs or values, or if those need to be changed. And that's really the work that we're going to be doing tonight, okay? And so when you're looking at strategic planning, and again, planning strategically and why it's necessary because if you don't develop clarity and consensus about the future of any organization, what happens? Right? You let things happen to you. We all know that successful businesses don't do that, right? They plan strategically. They plant the flag and they set the direction of a district. And that's what we're going to be doing during these 3 sessions. It's also important to point out that when you're talking about planning, and that's why it's so important to have so many stakeholders in this room, that you really open up the lines of communication. Not only internally, and I'm talking about employees and board members and staff at MCPS, but externally. And make sure that the lines of communication are there, that you have open access to information, and we all know that there's certain information in schools that you can't disclose, right? If it's student information under FERPA, or quite frankly, employee information. But when you're talking about where a district is going, everybody should understand that. And the last thing is, as you're going through this process, we all know that it's not going to be all roses, right? If you're really talking about the long-term envision future of any organization, there are going to be challenges, right? Think about it in terms of, getting to Mount Everest, and that's really what we're going to be talking about, not tonight, but in the next session. There are going to be barriers to your success, right? There are going to be challenges that you have to overcome, and a lot of people don't like to talk about that. They like to talk about it in terms of positive modes of movement. But if we're honest with ourselves, we have to look at and anticipate some of the challenges and barriers that you're going to experience as you're moving through this and changing, okay? That will be, again, not something tonight. I want to give you an overview of what we're doing. This is really for the trustees sitting in the room, but I also think it's important for other people to understand. For any board of trustees, I do a lot of training on roles and responsibilities of trustees, and it really boils down to the board, number one, setting the direction of any district. And that's why, as Rob said when we first started, this board feels like that is important. And for those boards that take that responsibility seriously, and again, I've done this a long time and for a lot of districts, and I know that districts that emphasize and value planning strategically, they tend to make progress at a faster pace than districts that don't, okay? And again, the whole purpose when you're going through this process, in the words of Glenn Tecker, we need to be thinking about looking up and out, okay? Up and out. So the Board of Trustees, job number one is setting the direction of the district with, of course, community stakeholders, all of you sitting in this room. Job number two is providing the resources to move in that direction. And when we're talking about resources, it's not just financial resources, it's human resources. Think about the collective will in this room is amazing in terms of the intellect and where all of you have been from. You all have different perspectives, different opinions. That is important when you're talking about human resources. And then the third responsibility of any board of trustees is oversight. And again, as Glenn Tecker would say, that doesn't mean snoopervision, right? It means accountability. It means that when we get this initial plan set in place, who's going to be responsible for seeing that things are actually getting done? Are we moving the needle? Are we not moving the needle? Okay? And I can talk to you guys, again, when we get to the end of this process, about some of the things that the board can do to ensure that you're making progress. We do this at MTSBA, and quite frankly, we've been doing it for about 15 years. And people always say, why does this process work? It works if you're committed to a knowledge-based strategic governance model, okay? And it's not just all about quantity. When people are talking about strategies and goals, and I've had this philosophical discussion with a lot of people, they always say the only thing that matters is data, right? The only thing that matters is test scores. When you're talking about making progress on some of the strategies and goals that we'll identify over the course of these 3 meetings, it's not just about the quantity. It's also about the quality. And when you're talking about quality, you're talking about, are you improving the lives of the children that you're impacting, right? Are you having a positive impact on those kids? So keep that in mind as well. So again, when you're talking about strategic planning by schools and communities, again, I would tell you that I think, in fact, I'm going to use this group as a model for future planning sessions so that other school districts can see what you can do when you communicate it well and get stakeholders in a room. The more people that we have in here, the better off we are, okay? So really committing to, number one, buy-in. And I'm guessing that none of you would be here unless you really cared about what MCPS was doing, right? Most of you have kids in this school system, some of you don't, but we all know that it takes a village, right, to raise each and every one of our youth in any community, okay? So really important to commit to this process. And again, please don't think about this as participating in 3 meetings, okay? This is just the beginning of a new era, okay? And if you want to review, where did Hatton go? Is that me? Oh. Okay. Do they all have access to the 5-year report that you provided to me?
Yeah, so there are 2 ways if the community wants to see this report. You can go to our district homepage and just sort of scroll down beyond the big picture and you'll see our 5-year in review report. We presented it at the board meeting last week. So it's also linkable from our calendar if you're used to going and looking for board agendas and materials that go with that. You can find it from our calendar from last week's board meeting.
I would encourage you to do that, and again, in your quote-unquote spare time, I would encourage you to read that document. So this is really just to get people to understand the progression of these 3 meetings. The only thing that we're going to be talking about tonight is that circle to the left, okay? Core purpose and core values, which is core ideology. And remember what I said earlier about planting the flag and then stimulating change around everything else? That's what we're going to be doing tonight. Just talking about the current mission of the district, looking at the core beliefs, and having discussions about whether or not those are truisms today, okay? That's all we're doing tonight, and you might think that, geez, in 2 hours, trust me, with the number of people in the room, it'll be enough to get through that, particularly once I, of course, shut my trap. So, moving forward, the next session, which will be in February, we're going to be looking at long-term Envision future, okay? And I would ignore that continuum at the top, because I think 30 years out, when you're talking about where the state of any school district or organization might be in 30 years, I think it's hard for any of us to imagine that. But next session, and when you leave here tonight, I'm going to give you a little bit of a homework assignment, because I've, again, done this enough where if you come in cold and I give you that exercise in February, people tend to get a little bogged down. So when you leave here tonight, you're going to be thinking about where you want this district to be in about 10 to 15 years. That's not easy either. Again, none of us know what the state of public education is going to be, right, in 10 to 15 years? How many of you think it's going to look differently than it looks right now? Yeah, for sure, right? Even if you just look at one factor, i.e. technology, right? Huge impact on the way that kids are learning and the way that teachers are teaching. And then remember when I was talking about barriers. Next session we're going to talk about barriers. Doing an environmental scanning process, because this process is not just about looking internally myopically, it's also about looking externally, looking at what's going on around you in the area of demographics, business and economic climate, science and technology, legislation and regulation, and politics and social values. People always say, why just those 5 categories? Because quite frankly, everything fits within one of those categories, okay? Politics and social values don't always go together, depending upon your perspective, right? But we're going to be looking at that externally and looking at what you anticipate is going to happen in those areas that's going to impact your ability to be successful. The third session, when I come back in March, we're going to be talking about what I would characterize as short-term goals and strategies. Think about how quickly 5 years goes by, right? So the last session is going to be looking at 3 to 5 year goals and 1 to 2 year strategies, okay? So that's sort of the game plan for the 3 meetings that we're going to have. Another way of looking at this is there's 3 phases of this. Who are we? Where are we going? and how are we going to get there, right? Session 1, who are we? Session 2, where are we going? And session 3 is going to be, how are we going to get there, okay? Anybody have any questions at this point in time? No? I'm going to skip over this real quickly because I think, just given the time constraints, and this is more for the board too, but I think for those trustees sitting in the room, and I know that Rob has seen this before, you want to think about whether or not you're spending your time wisely as a board. You want to make sure that as a volunteer, publicly elected official, that you guys are spending your time on big ticket items. And you can't really do this with every board meeting, and we used to do this at the MTSBA board as well. We used to go through a bunch of routine business, bring people from all over the state together for 2 days, and when we started working with Glenn Tecker, he said, why bother? People can read reports, right? If you're going to bring people together and ask for their time, make sure that it's important, okay? And think about, even on your agendas, and I haven't looked at your agendas lately, but you want to think about putting those big ticket items right up front, because that's where the board's time is supposed to be spent. Even though we have a statute in Montana that has about 33 or 34 duties of trustees in this state, trustees are always supposed to be looking at it from a visionary perspective, strategic, again, looking up and out. So, Marcia, just food for thought as you're moving forward. I already talked about stimulating change, preserving core purpose and core values, stimulating change around everything else. So, now we're going to get into the work that you're going to do, okay? And I want to take this in 2 segments. First of all, you're going to be looking at the mission, okay? The mission that is in front of you. And remember, when you're talking about mission or core purpose, it's not a goal, okay? When you're looking at the core purpose of any organization, it's your fundamental reason for being. And people might say, that's easy, right? Educating kids, right? I want you to have a discussion, and trust me, these are not wordsmithing sessions. What I do is, and we'll pass out chart paper, I want somebody at your table to summarily record the work that you've done, and if we have time, we're also going to have you report out, because I think it's important for everybody in the room to hear the thought process and ideas of other people. Do not get into a wordsmithing exercise tonight, okay? What I want you to do is look at the current mission and either confirm that it is in fact and states very articulately the reason that this district exists, okay? And if it doesn't, I want you to identify concepts that you think need to be in there, okay? Again, I don't want you tearing it apart. From a wordsmithing perspective, we're looking for concepts, okay? And you might say, it fits with what we're doing. And core purpose, generally speaking, does not change over time. It's a timeless concept, but I think it's always best, given the fact that it looks like it hasn't been reviewed in a few years, that everybody in the room review it and give your input in terms of whether or not that still is a truism, okay? So that's the first exercise that we're going to do. Second exercise is you're going to look at the core beliefs that are on the flip side of that page, okay? And you're going to be looking at, and again, not wordsmithing. In fact, I would almost look for headliners. If somebody's looking at enrolling their children in Missoula County Public Schools, would they know what you stand for? Would they know what this district values? We always get the question, are school district values the same as community values? How many of you think that, yes, that's true? That they should be aligned? I think that they have to be aligned. Otherwise, you have a community public school, quite frankly, that does not represent the local values of the people that are supposed to be sending their kids to school. And let's face it, with all of the options that parents have, you have to make sure, and one of the reasons that we go through this process is not only to make sure that MCPS remains relevant, but that you're the best game in town, right now and into the future. Because if you're not, with all of the options, and let's face it, I'm a parent too, we're going to send our kids to the best place where they can get the greatest education, whether that be public or private, right? And so for any community school, one of the reasons that this is important is to make sure that now and in the future that you guys can say there is no better education that any of the kids in our communities are going to get other than right here in this school system, okay? So when you're looking at core values, again, I don't want you to be looking at how it's worded. I want you to be looking at conceptually whether those values and beliefs that are on that paper, again, are a truism, or if there are things that you would recommend be removed, or values that you do not see on the paper, okay? So first order of business, we're going to be looking at only the mission, okay? And I'm going to give you as much time, probably not more than 20 minutes, and that might be too much. We'll sort of gauge it. Hatton, I think, is going to help me pass out chart paper. I think all of you have markers at your table. Again, one person needs to record, and then if we have enough time, we'll have, doesn't have to be the same person. You could delegate someone else if you're the recorder to report out the work of your table. And then we'll take the second segment. Yes, sir?
You want us looking at the mission and the vision? Or
No,
just
I don't want you looking at vision.
Okay.
We're only focusing on mission tonight, mission and values, okay? We're going to look at that vision statement when I come back in February, okay? Good question.
And groups, if you want wall space, we've got lots of wall space. So if you're feeling compressed, you can pull tables a little apart or use wall space since they're all sticky pads.
And it's going to get really loud in here.
Thank you.
I know
you're discussing mission. So hold up a minute. There's a slide in your packet. Once you're done with your discussion about concepts, I want you to turn to page 14, and this is not a hard and fast test where you circle yes or no, but look at the criteria that are there and see if it passes the smell test. Okay?
They're also on the screen if you don't have your packet, if there aren't enough packets to go around.
Only mission.
Okay. But if you don't like the arrow there, everything that she's everything.
Is everyone ready to report out? That I would have everybody out of here by 8 o'clock, okay? So what we're going to do, because we have microphones in this room, is whoever is your reporter, I want you to take your flip chart or your paper and go to the back of the room so that we can pick it up on the mic. And we're going to start with this table here. If you guys could maybe just give an overview of what you discussed, and again, go to the back of the room. And if we need detail, paper, I can do that too.
I got it.
Got it? So let's listen up and see what each group came up with.
I think in general, we initially just sort of liked it. I mean, there was nothing there that was glaringly sort of bad or backward. We did embrace the idea of citizenship that it's not stated there. Our first thing we talked about was tapping into somehow talking about future citizens, being kids, they're going to be in our community, and so talking about responsibility and future citizenship. We pulled out the things we really liked in terms of just little core pieces, full potential. So then we got into this discussion about what does that signal, and there's I can't remember the phrase, the little comma. Yeah, we kind of started parsing that a little bit, like what is that really saying? Is that communicating something clearly, or is it veiling a message, and should we be more specific about what we mean by that? We kind of took it to mean, we realized that every single kid is going to have different ability potentials, but no matter what that is, we're going to tap into that. And also not putting it off towards a 12th grade sort of you've arrived there thing. Every day, every sort of month, every year, we're working towards that, and so it's not a destination, but a kind of an approach to moving toward full potential. And that's kind of what this region was. Just that was kind of the bulk of our middle conversation. And then we're not wordsmithing. We're just suggesting perhaps an idea like cultivating, adding language about that, which again goes back to that sort of constantly working on the garden, as it were. And so, colleagues, what did I not say? We're good? Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
Good, nice job. And typically I would allow people in the room to comment on the work of your group, but I think in the interest of time, we'll save that for our next session. How does that sound? So what about this table in the back? What did you guys come up with? Remember, if you're the scriber, you can delegate the task. Oh, I can delegate.
Oh, man. Okay, so looking at the mission and core beliefs, it just kind of brought up some thoughts, so that's what we wrote down. So we talked about how it's important to have equal access and equity. We also came up with the thought about citizens and what is the goal of education? Well, it's to produce productive and successful citizens. We also talked about how it's important to find student strengths. So right now, are students finding their strengths? And what do they feel like they're really good at? We also talked about a well-rounded education and a holistic child. And how do we empower our students? We brought up the point that there are no students in the room tonight. And we thought, how do we give our students voice and ownership, which is down a little bit. We also talked about increasing self-worth, sense of belonging, pride, connection, and building the confidence of a child. And then we also talked about exposure and exposing our children to a lot of different things to find their strength, right? And doing that at an early age so that they can find their passion. And then we talked about how it's really important to build relationship and build community, that buy-in from parents and the community, and how, kids can come to school having a rough time at home, and how do we engage the parents so the parents feel like they also belong. A lot of concepts. We didn't really talk about the mission, but this all stemmed from the mission, right? Sorry.
Don't feel bad. There are usually a couple of tables that just don't follow directions.
At the risk in the interest, I guess, of being brief, we did bring up some of the things that have already been discussed, especially with the, I'll just start where we noticed that learning is not in the mission. Some form of learning, or continuum of learning needs to be evident, or we would like to see that evident in there. We also talked about full potential, which was mentioned. We questioned, it seemed to be a time-sensitive thing, and does that mean by senior year? And I think one of the groups brought up 12th year and then what? But we looked at maybe not necessarily achieving potential, but growing the desire in the student to achieve potential, as opposed to just presenting them, you have now reached your potential, good, congratulations, we're done with you. We don't want to do that. We did note, and this is a little bit of wordsmithing maybe, but in the interest of the his and her full potential, we would like to see maybe a gender neutral, a more up-to-date reference there. We did note that every student we feel addresses every student, and we kind of had some discussions about the regardless of circumstance and ability, like the second group did. And we also talked about encouraging strengths as opposed to maybe pointing out or pigeonholing in the other direction. And also, and it being inclusive of not just the school, but the whole community, because it is Missoula County Public Schools, and we think that we want to include families, communities, and others if there are in there.
Well, yeah, you're doing awesome. A lot of our things have actually been said also to the his and her, changing it to their to make it more inclusive. Using the word engagement somewhere in there, or just thinking about that student engagement. We really talked about to ensure, landed a lot on the adult responsibility piece of it, and so that's where that engagement piece came in, thinking together, but we did like the part where it says student achieves. We do like the word circumstance. We talked about some other words like conditions, and we just really did like the word circumstance. Access to opportunities, so kind of that bigger picture, looking at the opportunities, looking at the education, it opens the doors for more opportunities, not stopping at the 12th grade, and the equity of education. And we did, citizens also was brought up, and we did like though that it was a pretty concise statement. We talked a lot about some mission statements get really lengthy, and we did like that this was pretty core and to the point. So. Good.
Do you have two on there?
Yeah, but I think
How am I going to do two?
I know it. You can roll it up. Okay, so ours are pretty much a reiteration of what people have said. We talked about changing the gender language from his or her. And then we talked about sort of what we like about the district currently and what that speaks to in that statement. We talked a little bit about how it is expanding from just academics into physical health, mental health, and the whole child, and whether or not that's being met by that sentence. And ultimately, we felt like we did like how it was sort of large and broad, and we did wordsmith a little, and I'll tell you what it is, to ensure every student achieves their full potential, because we felt like the sort of tagged on part sort of calls out that maybe, I don't know, it just felt odd. If you're ensuring every student achieves their full potential, it's implied that it's regardless of circumstance, regardless of neighborhood, regardless of all of that. So it shouldn't be kind of tacked on, like, that's it. Anything else, guys? Yeah?
Wait, wasn't there page 2?
That took 2 pages.
Nice job. Nice job.
Okay, so I'm gonna skip over the stuff that was the same as everybody else's. We weren't a fan of the mission statement. We wanted more of a process-oriented mission statement. So the district does a lot of work with clarity and John Hattie and all that stuff. So we wanted to change it more to goal-setting language, where the students could have ownership of their own mission and what they're doing in setting goals, because that has a really high effect size on it. We thought we should keep it simple. Broad enough to be able to relate back to the statement, whatever smaller goals we put in place can be able to relate back to that. We said don't call it a mission statement because everybody calls it a mission statement. So we put hashtag big slogan or hashtag big goal. And then we really talked about the goal on that sheet that said what Disney did, like just make people happy. So in 100 years when we look back on it, what if it's just do what is best for kids, right? We still want that to happen. Anything else?
Nice.
Hashtag core purpose.
I'll be brief. Yeah, the pronoun thing, we kind of noticed that right off the bat. I think we're finally figuring out that Homo sapiens has never been binary. And we're just appreciating that now. One thing we kind of thought about, we just basically talked a lot, that we really thought that it missed some kind of inspiration. When you read it, it was just kind of like, and you just kind of went, yeah, and that was it. And we were thinking, maybe the word inspire needs to be in there or something like that. It is also phrased as a requirement. Can I see that real quick? The statement itself. It says to ensure every public student achieves his or her full potential. And we just kind of had the scenario as if you were in a classroom and a teacher says, you will achieve your full potential while you're in this classroom. And some kids would really rise to that and they'd say, this is awesome, I love this guy. And some kids would go, oh yeah? I'll show you how I can achieve my full potential. And so, it's kind of phrased as a requirement, and just having that inspiration in there to give kids, kind of their own voice and helping them find their own voice and finding their own strengths and interests. And missing citizenry, we're kind of thinking informed, productive, participatory citizenry. And when I think about when I'm in a classroom, that's what I want to produce. It's not necessarily college-bound kids. It's not necessarily VOTEC-bound kids. It's not necessarily any kind of kid. It's just informed, productive, and participating. So, I think that's it.
Nice job.
To be brief, we're just going to say ditto and be done. No, this was great feedback. We had a great discussion. I think the main conciseness of the overall statement we thought was very helpful. We thought the specificity and the full potential, as a lot of you have commented, every student's going to be different, and so we went right to the measurement. How do we measure this or define what full potential even is for our students? And that was a big talking point for our group. Overall, we'd like to measure that, and every student's different. We know that. Maybe it's an opportunity to provide these front doors through this process for them to realize that potential, but we did spend a lot of time, like all of you, speaking to that overall. And then what's next? So if we're telling students we're going to get you to full potential today, then is that it? We just pack it up and you check that box, and so really having these outcomes and introduce students to what that might mean for them. And it is a lifelong process, as a lot of you have mentioned, and so we really wanted to focus on that, this being a launching pad for that. And then we criticized number 6 on the core purpose. I don't know if that was part of the exercise overall, but on would this purpose be greeted with enthusiasm rather than cynicism by a broad base of people in district. And so we thought that was very independent of the household, right? And so if you have a child that might be struggling or is failing to maybe walk through that door that we're providing, I think there's going to be some cynicism there. And so we really can't make that all encompassing overall, but we wanted to criticize number 6 in our presentation. So, thank you.
Fair enough.
Well, my table picked the dad and the substitute teacher, so I don't see any sub notes here, but you guys are awesome. I'm really encouraged being a parent and a member of this community. The community aspect, really, we talked about that a lot, how the school just breathes into the community and the community breathes back into it, whether it be after school or during the summer time. So the other big thing was the lifelong learner aspect and mentoring partners within the community. And yeah, you guys all listed a lot of things that we talked about, so I don't want to take any more time, but just that social responsibility we also listed. Of course, family, how do we, someone mentioned not not criticizing parents, but helping them be more engaged. A lot of parents just are exhausted throughout, at the end of the day, as our teachers. So keeping that, that voice and communication moving forward. So if that can reflect in the mission statement, that'd be awesome. So, yeah.
We recognize that there's almost 10,000 kids, but there's more than 1,000 employees. And so we want it to not just be a student-centric mission, but that it is something that's expressive of everybody achieving their potential.
Nice job, everyone. That was good. Great, actually. So, you're gonna have to work efficiently if we want to be out of here by 8 o'clock, but I think you can do it. So now I know that some of you may have already looked at the beliefs that are on the flip side of that page. And in order to get through this evening, I don't want you looking at all of the words on that page. I want you to look at the bold, the headliners, okay? And what I want you to look at when you're talking about core values, remember, all of us have values, right? What you're trying to articulate and identify are what are the core values, the tenets, the beliefs, the behaviors that you exhibit each and every day, right? Core value of community, core value of district. People always ask the question, are core values goals? No. Can there be room for improvement in your core values that you state? Absolutely, okay? So again, I want you to look at only what's there in bold, and I want you to have the same types of discussions that you had at your tables on core purpose. And when you get done with those discussions, let me flip through here real quick. If you really want to articulate what core values are, they really are how people behave, your expectations for behavior of people, right? So again, same type of routine that we did on core purpose. And then when you get done, I want you to run this test again on page 20. And I'm going to give you, we're going to have to again expedite this. I'm going to give you about 12 minutes to have those discussions. And we can come back and revisit this when I come back in February, but I want you to get through this. And again, same thing, somebody scribe at your table, a summary, and then we'll report out at 7:45 and hopefully be out of here by about 8 o'clock, okay? Sound good? Can everyone listen up for a minute? Hold on, guys. Thank you, whoever did that. I don't want you rushing through this. I think what we're going to do, because this is important, what we're going to do is I'm going to have you report out preliminarily what you've discussed. And what I always do when I end these sessions is I take all of the work that you've done. I never do anything with the raw notes. Okay, those will come back to you. And I try and synthesize the information. But I want to give you more time on core values, and I want to also commit to the time that we said we would be out of here at 8 o'clock. So what I want you to do now is report out, and then when I come back on February 25th, we're going to revisit this. And trust me, we'll have time. Again, I think it's important and not rush through this. So with that, and again, I know that you could probably spend another 15 or so minutes on this. Let's start with that back table back there. Report out what you've discussed, and you'll have another opportunity on the 25th, but just preliminarily.
Nothing to report.
That's all right. You want to pass? So let's listen up for those that do want to report out.
I don't know if we want to report, we're going to report. So, it's very strategic. We actually went through bullets 1 and 2, and our main takeaway was some of the wordsmithing again, that we feel like we could change some of the wording from engaged and inspired rather than challenged. And so seeing some of that, just the tone, I think, of the statement overall to make some changes there. It's missing the student-centered language, and we think that, given that today that's important to all of us, we could do a better job of that as well. Bullet number 2 is very muddy and it's hard to follow, so it just seems like a choppy choice of words overall, and there's a lot to cover in bullet number 2. So we wanted to think about not using terms like insist. It seems somewhat combative in the word. The overall statement has that sort of vibe, so we want to sort of incorporate foster or support and not insisting on things. So again, it just seems very very combative in some areas. That's just, our once over there overall. Missing the personal and professional growth, and competency seems to promote the minimum standard, right? And so if we're talking about being competent in something, that's something that just denotes the minimum standard, not striving for excellence, and that's kind of what we wanted to get from that second bullet point. And that's as far as we got.
Good. Nice job. How about this table right here, right in front of them? You guys want to report out? I should never make that optional.
Yeah, you gave me. I kind of like the idea, just the first one, just like thinking it was at 6 words. Every child deserves some challenge. I think that's kind of a powerful statement on some when we talk about that. We're just like, yeah, why don't we just stop there? And then we can talk about the rest. Core belief number 2, grammatically it's a mess. As you know, so we talked about that. We like the idea that basically professionals, staff, all of that is really driving the system, and we need to support them, and just an acknowledgement of that. I guess number 2 is getting at. We like the idea, we just don't know how to rework it. Number 3, new learning environment continually evolve to be engaging, safe, and up to date. Newer isn't always better. We were talking about adding something more like inviting or flexible or adaptive, those kinds of terms. And we like the description with number 4, but the word strong, what's the implication of that? And it depends on the listener. Like reflect, reflective, integral, foundational, fundamental component of the system of the community, blah, blah, blah.
This is sort of like speed dating.
Okay, so we
looked at number 1, and we didn't like the word child. We know we have high school students in our district, and they are not children, many of them. We thought overall they all lack some sort of inspiration. Number 1, we were looking at these 3 words: access. So students or schools provide access, opportunity, so that students can be agents of their own life. We thought, we didn't even touch number 2. We thought somewhere, we talked a lot about how in all the schools we have these universals: be safe, be respectful, be kind, be responsible, be a leader. So why is that not in our core beliefs? And then number 4, so somehow adding that in if it doesn't meet one of these. And then number 4, talking more about community partnerships instead of strong communities. We didn't like that word as well.
Okay, so we identified that the 4 core beliefs seem to match. The first one being students, the second one being about staff, the third one being about the place, and the 4th being about the larger community. And so then really with the student one, we wondered if we wanted to add in some citizenship component here, because that seems to be coming up a lot. The second one we also didn't really parse a lot, other than noting the grammatical nightmare that it was. The place one, although it talks about the environment right up front, it doesn't really speak to specifically to facilities, and both inside and out, playground and school, and we thought that that should be included in there more explicitly. I think we all kind of liked the community one, although we thought engage might be a nice word in there too, that we engage the larger community. And then we talked about communication being a big important component of this whole big picture between students, between teachers, staff, district, and that's not really maybe outlined anywhere, and if that needs to be a core belief on its own or included in somewhere else. And then we also talked about both equity and or consistency across the district not being articulated in here, and that being something that needs to be addressed or needs to be a core value. That students and staff and parents can expect similar standards at all schools and similar experiences and educational outcomes.
Nice job.
Thank you.
And don't forget, before we leave, I'm going to need your small pieces.
You can have it.
Okay, so I spent the first 6 minutes talking about the first one, so I got sent up here. There were several comments about equipped from our group. The word was not approved of in several ways. I challenged the first one with a few things. I thought that we need to think about bigger concepts than the child, and that the community as a whole are the learners with the school district. Myself as a parent, whether you're staff or administrators, we're all going through a learning process with this, and I've learned a lot as I've worked through when I work with Lowell about that. So thinking about it in that way, that not just the children. And I also thought that, see, I'm talking a lot now again, that we're preparing them for life, not life beyond school, but just life, because there's outside of school and all that stuff. Anyway, we talked about integration with public school and communities, not starting and ending at school, but a continuum about that. Equal access to innovative programs was a hot topic in our group, and I'll leave it at that. Safe learning environment, of course, super important. Partnership collaboration to be part of the success, not just the teachers and staff. And we finished up talking about how do we fit in to the core beliefs: equity, diversity, inclusivity, and about well-being. The well-being, the health well-being, physical well-being, all of that for our students, our staff, parents, families, everybody involved with the schools.
Okay, we kind of started out the way that you guys did, very similarly, going through the 4, and then felt super overwhelmed because how do you get to a core value? So we started talking about why do we believe that education is compulsory or should be compulsory? Why do we believe in public schools in general? And that should be our core values. So we started talking about just respect. When we were talking about the individual ones, we didn't love the bottom one. The last one just didn't seem to fit. Less is more, prioritizing safety in the environment, both emotional and physical safety. Engagement was a big one that came up, motivation, self-advocacy skills. How do we build a child but also give them the responsibility? Relationship building is humongous, building citizenship and responsibility, having a shared experience. Oh, we didn't like the parent one in the bottom of number 2, I think it was. And number 1, sorry. And just that we want a continuous learning, that should be a core value also.
I like going near the end, everything's already been said. This is a very short list. We did a lot more talking than we did writing this time. And we had a lot of the same discussions that the first 2 tables had mentioned and some of the other things that have been mentioned. We needed to get more inspiration out of it. I think we felt generally that, like the table up at the front there, that the sentiments, I think, of the beliefs that were listed there are directionally, I think they're good. Everybody agrees the second one just doesn't make sense unless Yoda was speaking it, I think. And I'll throw in this at the last one. I think we like the idea of communities and the school system. It needs to be a little bit kind of both ways, not just one creating the other. I think they need to work hand in hand, and that the collaboration that was brought up was important too. So it kind of goes beyond that. We weren't just playing on our phones, I swear.
Huge gratitude for those who worked on this for the 2020 visions. And I feel like we're shredding it, but we were kind of asked to in some ways. You know what I'm saying? It's all good.
Yeah. You can always make improvements, right?
Right.
Okay, we had a lot of similar sentiments. We felt like challenged felt combative again, and sometimes it's struggling, so we liked inspired again and prepared for life beyond school. We also thought equipped was weird. And the second statement, obviously, I think that's universal. We all hate it. We just wanted to talk about valuing and supporting innovative, committed, creative leaders. Not anybody who works in our school is a leader. Our students are leaders. Everybody should be a leader. So we didn't feel the need to specifically list all the different categories that we should all be leaders. Learning environments continually evolve, and we wanted to add the equitable part to that. We thought engaging, safe, and up-to-date was pretty standard, but we did feel like the equitable part is something we really need to address in our district. And at the last one, we felt like saying that a community starts with the school was, again, one-sided, and that it's a partnership, and we want to talk about being a part of our community and engaging with that community more than like, again, it's separate, you know what I mean? We have our school and we have our community. We want it to all be one thing. And we saw the themes also, and yeah, a lot of the strong words just felt very combative and punitive, and we want it to feel more, I think, inspiring was the word we really latched onto. Anything else? Good, all right. That's it.
So I'm pretty amazed at the amount of work that we actually accomplished by 8:01. I really appreciate your time tonight, and I know from going through this process that even going through these 2 exercises tends to be exhausting, so you can see why we actually divvy this up into 3 different meetings. Remember, our next meeting is February 25th. Same time, 6 to 8. Is that correct?
So we published 6 to 8. It'll be part of a work session on a regularly scheduled board meeting. So there may be a component of board meeting work that has to happen and then we transition. So wait for hearing more instructions on exactly the timing. And then we also need to ask for public comment. So if individuals would like to make public comment, our rules around public comment are that we limit it to about 3 minutes. We'd like you to say and spell your name if it's unique. There's also a sign-in sheet there. And board members don't respond to public comment. Is it okay that I'm giving all these instructions? Or would you like to? Okay. So, yeah. So you get to offer your public comment. It becomes part of the record, but it feels sometimes a little cognitively strange because nobody responds to it. You just say it. And last but not least, if you are a member of the public that joined us, thank you so much. There is a sign-in sheet in the back. So Rob's waving it around. We'd love for you to leave your name and your contact details so that we can stay in touch with you throughout the process. So
Just the folks that weren't on your original list.
That's right. So if you weren't sort of part of the committee that committed to be here, but you showed up out of the goodness of your heart and your time, please sign up on this document that Rob's waving around. So with that said, would anybody like to make public comment? You would do so at the podium at the back. Yes, sir.
I had no plans to do this, but just because this is an opportunity, and it's only 3 minutes.
And you've been inspired to do so.
I've been inspired. Rob Jensen, Jensen. Therapy dogs are not allowed in the schools, in Missoula County Public Schools. I've been looking for a trustee to basically help carry the torch through the process and have been unsuccessful at finding one so far. In the early 2000s, I had a dog in the certified therapy dog, which is different from a service dog. A service dog is like handicap mobility, blind mobility, that kind of thing. But a certified therapy dog that had been like, I had to pass an exam, we had to pass an exam together as an evaluated team for obedience and discipline and all that. And I had a dog in my classroom for 7 years. And 7 years ago, the school board changed that policy and said, no, only service dogs. Now, I know there are probably dogs in the buildings somewhere, and I'm not saying a word, okay? Good on you. But for many, many years, I had a certified therapy dog for 7 years, was not able to bring it. And it's a real shame to have little kids being able to read to a dog. I would have special ed kids who weren't even my students stop by my classroom just to touch the dog. Didn't even talk to it, didn't say anything, not even my student, never knew the student's name. They would just come in, touch the dog, and then leave. And just almost literally a touchstone for that kid for the day. And so, boy, I'd love to see therapy dogs in the schools. K-12. So. If somebody's interested in that, I put out a whole packet binder, like here's my proposal, policy changes, and here's how to do it, and here's how other school boards have done it around the country. There's a packet that I put together a couple, 3, 4 years ago, at least 2 years ago, and I can just hit print again if somebody's interested. So, thanks.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to make public comment? Well, thank you. We all really appreciate your time and the energy you brought tonight.
Thank you for being here.
See you later, Mickey. Same here.